The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Howdy ho, everybody. Coming to you cordless from Northeast Minneapolis. It's Wednesday night, April 9th, 2025. I am Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 219, if you're keeping score at home, and you should be. You should do that. So, what do we got going on tonight? I'll tell you what we got going on. Tim Conaway, our old friend, is joining us. He's the former executive editor of Hustler magazine, and he edited like a dozen different magazines over the course of his career. He's a professional editor. He knows journalism. We do not. And that's why we have him on here, because he will tell us about journalism. What I'm really interested in tonight is his thoughts on the stock market. That's what I'm interested in. Okay, so the other thing I have an announcement I got to make here too is that, well, first of all, we are now broadcasting in 1080p full HD as of last Thursday, or no, Monday, excuse me, as of Monday. We tried it on Monday as an experiment, worked out just fine. It's permanent. So we went from 720 to 1080, which means if you're going to watch this on a really big screen, like in your living room off the Rumble app or the YouTube app, it will look much better. It will. My hair is nuts. I want to apologize for that. I don't know what's going on. I'm growing or something. Well, you know, if you know me, I was growing. I got a little. Later on, we're going to talk about a little thing here where another company's come out with basically a flying car, and it turns out I can't ride in it because I'm too heavy. Oh, Jesus Christ. Really? I'm not that fat. I mean, I know I'm fat, but still, it's like, come on. So anyway, the hair's nuts. And then over the weekend, we're going to try, we bought Bluetooth earbuds now. We're going to try that. The big fancy soundboard puts out Bluetooth. And so we're going to try. So no more of these cords here. I got to, hold on a second. There we go. Usually I got it going on, but not this very second. Okay, there we go. So we got that. Now we had a show scheduled for tomorrow night. If you go on our schedule on our website, jimatnight.com, it's on there. Jonathan Lockwood, he had to reschedule because of a family emergency. He's coming on next Thursday. So the bad news is we're not doing a show tomorrow night. And of course, we usually don't do Fridays. We've done a couple Fridays this year already because that's the only time guests can make it. But we usually don't do Fridays. Next week, we have a full slate, though. On Monday, our friend Don Zorro is going to be here. You'll always love talking to him. Always has an interesting idea on something. On Tuesday, I asked Dr. Murray Sabrin, our resident economist extraordinaire, to come on to explain the tariff thing in detail, basically, because nobody, this is my bitch. Nobody in America knows anything about economics. Nobody. The people in Congress don't. I mean, they're idiots. I mean, and the thing is, we gotta talk to Tim about this. The Senate, because it takes more money and there's less people and it's more prestigious, it's harder to get in. The Senate is not made up totally of dorks. The House is. I've always said the House is basically monkeys throwing feces at each other. It is. You have some of the stupidest people on the planet on the House because they get a pension, or something. I don't know why they run. I don't know. I have no idea. But at any rate, yeah. Yeah, I don't even know why I brought that up now. It's like, but yeah. It's because nobody in America knows anything about economics. That's the reason. So, Dr. Murray Sabrin's on Tuesday. I don't know who's coming on Wednesday, but we're going to do a show no matter what. And Thursday, Jonathan Lockwood, who was supposed to be on tomorrow night, he rescheduled for the next Thursday. That's the 17th, if I'm right. He's a military historian and author. He writes about military history and space exploration, and I eat that crap up. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him. Yeah, just very quickly, he called this morning, said couldn't make it, so we've rescheduled. So so we had a whole we had a whole schedule, full schedule next week. We're live tonight, and Tim is live too. Sometimes we tape our interviews in advance, but not tonight. Tim is actually here. If you have questions for him about like um, Hustler Magazine runs or how specifically he picked the pictures for the beaver hunt, if you want to know that in great detail, you can call in 325 call Jim. That's 325-225-5546. You can also send us a text. I got a text thing off the side of the screen here on a little screen. It's 408-458-5088. That's the numbers are at the bottom of the screen here. You can read them. You can call them. Please do. Want to talk to you, especially if you have questions for Tim. Please feel free to call up and interrupt us. We're going to do a commercial right now. When we be back, Tim Conaway will be joining us. Stay tuned, everybody. Hi, all. Jim Peters again for Conk News. Let me tell you one of the greatest things about Conk News. It's free. It's completely and totally free. You don't need to register. You don't need to log in, subscribe, none of that stuff. Sure, they run a few ads on the front page, but if you're an old fogey like me, you might actually appreciate this because when you check out Conk News at conk.com, you'll probably notice that it's the closest thing to an old-fashioned hard copy newspaper that you'll find online. The latest up-to-the-minute news from 75 high-quality sources collected every 3 hours, all laid out with photos and headlines directly from the articles. And when you click on a story, you go directly to that story. No ad page, no interstitial page, none of that stuff. This is the way online news is meant to be. And did I mention that it's completely free? Seriously, how much of stuff in America is free now, right? That's of quality anyway. So check this out for yourself. It's at conk.com, CONK.com. Conk News. Joining us from his home somewhere in the Minneapolis metro, which is secret, Tim Conaway. Hi, Tim.
Hi.
I'm so easily amused, and you know that.
Yeah. From my secret abode, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got your microphone working, and I'm not, the reason I bring that up is because anyone who tries to do this, and if you're on Windows, the video's easy. The microphone, it's basically they tacked it on while they were flying in midair. It's really stupid and confusing. It just is.
Well, Windows has only been around for like 25 years or something.
That's right.
50,
That's right.
50. So yeah, they'll get it right someday.
They will. They'll figure it out. That's correct. I used years ago when I was doing music production. I used a version. This is like I'm in 1989 now. I used Windows 2, which nobody remembers, and it was really bad.
Yeah. Well, Windows was, I think, basically Linux or Linux, however it's pronounced, with a few tweaks to make it so it wasn't free.
Yeah. Well, actually, technically, it was FreeBSD. That's what it was. That was what it was based on. So,
okay.
I know no one cares, but I know this shit. Whatever. Okay, so now, all right, I'm gonna. You tell me if I've mischaracterized you here. I would describe you as basically a conservative libertarian that doesn't like Trump. Is that a particular?
Yeah. That, to sum it up, that's pretty correct.
Okay, so what do you think about what's going on with all these tariffs?
Oh, well, I think it's a mistake. Well, he's slamming everything he can. It's like you throw everything up against the wall and, see what sticks kind of thing. He also, I think, he just wants to be, something he said yesterday or today, something he was at, dressed in a tuxedo, and he was saying the whole world is kissing his ass. So that should sum up everything about it. But tariffs are the point of tariffs are to encourage uh, distributors and wholesalers to buy domestic manufactured products over versus stuff that comes from overseas. And but the problem in America is that most there aren't any people in America manufacturing most of the goods that people buy. They're just not being made here. And you go back into the '60s, late '60s, when all this stuff started moving overseas. The iron and steel industry started moving over first, and then later on it was other kind of products, parts for automobiles and other vehicles are being made overseas. Then you get into the technology age, and it's just so much cheaper to do it overseas. And two reasons. The main reason was the cost of labor. The second reason was the cost of raw materials. Sometimes raw materials were more easily accessible in the foreign countries and could be imported again without customs and duties on them. As long as like 10, 12 years ago, it was one place that I was working at. We helped a company that was sending all of its manufacturing overseas. They had all the equipment here, but they sent it overseas because in Malaysia, you can pay people $2 an hour to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're happy for it. So, if the idea is, it's going to promote people to start manufacturing things in America, that's great, except if you started today to set up manufacturing for a lot of this stuff, it would be 4 years before you could open the doors on the place.
Yeah.
So it's another one of these, let's just bang all this stuff out and do it. To me, there's a constitutional question about what kind of tariffs and how much the tariffs can be that the president can initiate, because it's supposed to be part of Congress. Congress has enacted legislation to give more power in terms of tariffs to the president. But if you want to change the Constitution, you got to do an amendment. You can't do a law. So that's confusing. But all of the wimps in Congress are not going to stand up to Trump because he's so mighty.
Tim, so okay, so I totally understand and buy what you're talking about the fact that the idea of the tariffs, or of tariffs in general, as a concept, is to get people to buy local or national, right?
Yeah.
So, and like you said, do you think it's too late? In other words, we have shipped, especially to China, and and I put this in the show notes for today. To me, my mind, I can see the debate about what's going on globally, except for China, because they're assholes, and they rip it, and they do. I'm not talking about ripping us off like in terms of a trade deficit. They literally steal stuff. I don't have to tell you this. I mean, you can buy a copy of Windows 11 on the street in Beijing for $5. They do not care, and they've been doing this forever. So, but the question is, right, especially when it comes to like our drugs, and okay, I can make an argument that should never happen in the first place, but it's happened and it's water under the bridge. Is it too late for us to do this?
Well, it's I don't know if it's too late. It's too soon to impose tariffs without having the manufacturing developed here. So but whether or not we could do this, we'll never be able to compete with a lot of these overseas countries, and particularly China, in terms of the cost of labor.
Right.
And so that's, that was the big factor that drove all this out in the first place. And and a lot of the raw materials now, I mean, we don't have a lot of the raw materials that we had 50 years ago.
No, that's right. No.
Not domestically, uh, but slapping stuff on everybody again is a mistake. This is something that need to be thought out and taken, take an approach to make it work for us. And it didn't all have to happen in the first week or the first month or any of that kind of stuff. There's time to work this out. So
I heard one economist describe it as a good idea, but sloppily done. He said, yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, it's not thought out. It's just like this Doge thing. We're just going to go in and cut all these things out. Well, there's a way to improve efficiencies, reduce the workforce and reduce the cost and improve the turnaround time. But you don't do it by just going into, the computer database and running an algorithm and kicking it out. So, all this is very slapdash and very, I got to get it done right away so everybody will, think I'm wonderful.
Well, in some ways, though, there is a strategic idea to getting it done right away because, I mean, the midterm elections are basically only 18 months away, if that, And so if this is not guaranteed to work, and I don't know a single economist who said it is. And if it fails, well, first of all, if it fails, the rest of Trump's presidency is screwed. There's no doubt about that. But even if it succeeds, they basically have to succeed before the midterm elections, don't you think?
Well, yeah, you would want to do that, but again, there is some time in there. I know everybody likes to start their electioneering, 2 years before the elections, which is the entire term of all those nitwits in the House of Representatives.
Did you hear what I said in the introduction?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I agree with you. I mean, these people don't know doodly; they know nothing, but still, I mean, you could roll it out so it's more efficient to give it an actual chance to work. If it fails, and I mean, if he'd gone ahead with all these tariffs that were supposed to come online today, we would see, I mean, in the next couple of months, it would put us in a recession. It would wreck a lot of the economy. And Fox News can find some farmer somewhere who this is great news for him because they're not going to import carrots from Guatemala anymore or something like that. But but in terms of automobile parts and electronics, and as you mentioned, pharmaceuticals and these other things, it would wreak terrible havoc. And once you get that kind of failure, you don't just turn around and make a bunch of declarations and come out of it. So, it's worrisome.
All right.
More than cutting down government, more than having an inefficient government, or worse than having an inefficient government, is wrecking the economy.
Yeah. You could call in and talk to Tim and I. 325-225-5546. You like the phone callers, don't you? Don't you think?
Oh yeah, they're swell.
Yeah. All right. So you alluded to this about the fact that Fox News will find some farmer in Nebraska to say that this thing's great. All right. So let's pivot here. You spent the majority of your life in journalism. Right now, we live in a country of 330 million people. You can always find somebody who's either devastated or thrilled with something. I mean, and this is starting to bother me because I was like, I think, well, and the legacy media will say, well, it's not our job to draw conclusions. But at some point, with so many people and such broad strokes on everything, don't you kind of have to? I mean,
well, you have to make informed decisions about what you're presenting. And one of the rules that used to exist, doesn't anymore, is you get your news from an authoritative source, somebody that is an authority on the subject. somebody, you don't get your crime report from some factory worker sitting at the end of the bar somewhere on his third beer. You get the crime report from the police department. You get your court reporting from the court. But now it's like anybody you can get to talk about something. It's like, well, we're supposed to accept that as like, oh, they're on TV, so they must know something. So, and people are willing to accept whatever they see. Well, I saw this guy on TV. It said, this is good news for ginseng farmers.
Okay, I take ginseng.
Yeah. Well, Wisconsin used to be like one of the world's top producers of ginseng.
I didn't know that. Is that true?
Yeah, out in the central Wisconsin area, and
I didn't know that at all.
yeah, and then with one thing and another, it became too expensive, and I think the first round of tariff fighting that Trump did way back when, and so China found somebody else to buy their ginseng from. And the fact that China doesn't grow its own ginseng, it's like the number one thing in all Chinese remedies,
Right, it is, yeah.
But
well, I have to say, it does generally work. I don't know about you. I mean, I take this stuff because, it'll make you feel better. It will,
Well, I'm one of those people that reacts negatively to it. So,
okay.
Yeah, it makes my heart race and makes me agitated. And, if I was gearing up for combat, it would be swell. But I tried it a couple of times when I used to work out vigorously at the gym, and it, it wasn't pleasant. So I stay away from it.
I'm really sorry to hear that. That's not good.
Yeah, well, and I'm the same with aloe. Everybody, everything that's out there has got aloe in it. All these wet wipes and all this stuff, and it's like I get a rash if I apply aloe to my skin.
So, would you say you're allergic to it?
Well, yeah, and I've read that 25% of the population is. But,
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that high.
Yeah. So, well, maybe it's not that high anymore because people have been rubbing it on their skin and
yeah, but we got the opposite problem of this. You and I are both I will put you in the old fogey category. Forgive me. You and I are about the same age. You go back 50 years and we were in high school, or even a little longer when we were in grade school. Mm-hmm. Do you remember anybody allergic, like having a peanut allergy or a nut allergy?
Yeah, it was very rare. Something you never heard about anything like that. That's for sure. Yeah, well, and who knows what all the reasons are for it, but people intentionally restrict their diets. People don't feed their children certain things, and so the kid never gets used to it. And that's because they listen to people like Gwyneth Paltrow for their nutritional advice.
Yeah, right. But look at what's going on in Texas right now. Okay, there's supposedly an epidemic of measles. I guess 500 kids or something like that. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, it was basically accepted that you would get measles just to kind of get immune to it. I mean, all kids got measles. I don't know if that's
but we all had vaccines against measles. You would get it, but it wasn't life-threatening. If you don't have the vaccine, measles in Africa, I'm in the Lions, and there's some Lions clubs in Africa that their big project was getting measles vaccinations for everybody because like 3 million people a year were dying from measles there. So even if you've got a vaccine, you can get measles, but it's 3 or 4 days and you feel bad. If you're not vaccinated, the chance of dying is pretty real. So that's the difference.
Okay, so the last I heard in Texas, 3 kids have died so far. And I'm thinking, well, how many people are in Texas? About 25 million? Seriously, it's like,
And I know. It's, it's not that many, fortunately, but it can be bad. And some people who are getting it are very ill with it for a long time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I used to get poison ivy all the time, and I never got immune to it. I just want to say that.
Were you just walking around the forest, or what were you doing?
Well, yeah, as a kid, I played on the river, banks of the Ohio River, and I played out in the woods out in the country. I had relatives out there, and it grew everywhere. It grew in town. It grew every place weeds would grow. There would be poison ivy among them, and so every summer, 2 or 3 times, I'd be covered with the shit. And you could get this stuff in the spring. You could get a vaccination from it for it, or some kind of treatment, so it wouldn't be so bad. But still, when you got it, it was bad. But yeah, I always thought I had it enough that I should never ever get it again.
Yeah.
That didn't work.
Yeah. All right. What do I ask you now?
Oh, I don't know. You said something about earlier about the stock market, which I know very little about because it's I've never had the kind of money that I could throw away on stuff. I've got money that's invested in these long-term safe kind of things, but playing the stock market, but it's bouncing around, and again, these tariffs, all these companies say this is going to be terrible for us, and a bunch of people sell their stock, and the stock values drop, and everybody's selling it off. It's like, okay, it becomes an unwanted item, and so the price goes down. And then, when Trump announced that he wasn't going to impose these for 90 more days in the 90-day relief period or whatever, the stock market jumps back up, almost all the stuff that it had lost. I've always thought the stock market was not, people talk about, oh, the stock market's up and the stock market's down, like that's the be all and end all of the economy. I've always thought that it was just one factor in the economy. Most of the companies that operate in America are not publicly traded on the stock market. So it's just one indicator. But everybody reacts to it like, that's all you need to know. So
I mentioned on the show on Monday about the fact that I think you can draw kind of a line around 2000, because before 2000, really in the 1990s, you could do this, but the internet was still young and most people didn't know this. Before 2000, you basically needed a stockbroker to have stocks, you know, and because of that, most of the people trading in the stock market were professionals. And although there was, occasionally there was some panic or whatever, as a general rule, it was pretty stable. After 2000, the great unwashed actually started trading stocks on their computers, and now it's the whole thing's populated by amateurs, and they just go batshit crazy all the time.
Yeah, and they don't understand how those stuff works. And look, if you try to read a report on the stock market that's written by people who understand what the stock market's about, they're using all this terminology that makes absolutely no sense if you don't, if you haven't studied all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so people, the day traders, and stock market, it isn't intended as a day trading thing. It's not like betting on the horses every day.
But it is.
Well,
you're right.
If you play it that way, yeah. Right. If you do the day trading kind of stuff, day to day, what's going to be big, what's going to be, small, what's the IPO coming out. So I don't pretend to know all of the stuff and all of the terminology on it. But if you're going to buy stuff that's going to be stable over a long period of time, and hold on to that until you retire, and then sell it all and move to Belize.
I have, I have a friend of mine who's in finance, and he says that for all those fancy reports that you're talking about, all those fancy terms, he says at the end of the day, everybody's still just guessing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then these companies always make their predictions for how they're going to do anything, and people buy stock based on predictions, and it's just like, well, you know, okay, well, we're expecting to do really well this quarter with our ginseng
I bet
farming,
you are. That's right.
and then at the end of, well, we had this ginseng blight, and it really messed us up. So
In
yeah,
Wisconsin.
yeah, yeah.
Well, hold on. I want to go back for a second. Do you agree with my thing about China, about the fact they've just been ripping us off for years and years and years?
Well, yeah, they put stuff out. They allow piracy, and I would say they might not openly promote it, but they promote it by not enforcing any of these,
Right.
per,
Like
private.
property
Yeah,
laws. Yeah.
yeah, and they rip it off and they manipulate their money. Now, I saw one thing that I thought was
Hold on, I gotta
interesting.
stop you.
Oh,
They don't manipulate their money. Basically their economy is false. I mean,
well, yeah,
they're communists, so they can. And that's why they've been trying to push the yuan as a world currency. Nobody wants to buy because nobody knows what's going on there. You can't believe what they're saying.
yeah, yeah. The government there owns 51% of every company.
Yeah, that's right.
And so they control all of them, and they do well. I think they do manipulate it by if they need the value of it to go down so that they remain competitive on the world market, they just print several billion more yuan all at once and flood it out there so the value stays low. I saw something I don't know, within the last month about. One person said they thought Trump was intentionally messing with the economy so that the value of the American dollar would diminish to the point where our goods and stuff could be purchased, like China does with their money. I don't think he's smart enough to figure that out or thinks that far ahead, but that was just an interesting take on it because the U.S. dollar has always been something that all currencies in the world are compared to
Yeah,
as
right.
as a standard. So, but who
You know,
knows?
you know what that reminds me of, and this is apparently was a real deal. People wonder why the American government has sent Iran so much money over the years. I mean, they're basically our sworn enemy, and yet we keep sending them dollars. Well, supposedly Barack Obama came up with this theory that to get equilibrium in the Middle East, the Israelis basically needed an equal adversary. And so, because the Israeli economy was really strong, there's no way to kind of bring that down. So they would just flood Iran with more money. Apparently this is a real theory. I think this is just insane, but apparently that's what that's the idea behind it.
Yeah. Well, the Saudi Arabia is extremely strong. Yeah, Iran. I've never understood why they get a nickel from us. And again, I'm not this thing where you just slash all aid at one time. I'm very much opposed to all this foreign aid, the amount of foreign aid that goes out, but you have to be very particular how you do it. There are some allies where it's to our advantage to do that. There are some third world countries, we'll call them the developing nations, whatever the sweetheart term for them is, that it's to our advantage because they may be sitting on a bunch of resources to do some of this stuff. A lot of it is money that goes in people's pockets and never gets to whoever the needy are. but I've never understood. We also sent foreign aid to Russia and to China. So what's the point of that? I don't get it.
Yeah, really, I know.
And especially Iran. There are lots of other places in the Middle East where we could try that ploy, but definitely not them.
Yeah, I don't get it either. It's just it's absurd to me. Okay, I haven't. You're talking about actually like foreign aid here. I'm going to bring this up. There's a psychic named Baba Vanya from Bulgaria. Now she passed away in 1996, and she's kind of she's blind. She was blind, and she's kind of was the kind of like modern day Nostradamus.
Mhm.
Well, apparently, even though she died in '96, there was this earthquake in Myanmar, last week or whenever it was, this huge earthquake.
Yeah.
She apparently predicted that correctly. So I just want to run some of the predictions by you that she actually predicted. She said that in 2025, there will be a conflict in Europe that will devastate the entire population of the continent. In 2028, she says we will begin exploring Venus as an energy source. In 2033, she says the polar ice caps will melt, raising sea levels to drastic heights worldwide. In 2076, she said communism will spread to countries around the world. 2130, she says humans will make contact with aliens. Now, here's the deal. Something. This is my thing, my show, and you probably think I'm nuts. We've already made contact with aliens. I don't know if the government has. I don't know that, but there's plenty of people that have had contact with aliens.
People have, and the government probably has in some way or other. Yeah, well, there's a chance that there could be some kind of conflict. It would take place in Europe. I don't know if it would wipe out the entire population, but it could be devastating. What was the other one? That we're going to, in 2076, we're going to, the polar ice caps melting. That's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
And, global warming, that people say, oh, it's a, fake science or whatever. No, we are warming it up. Just the idea that human beings are the only cause of it and can solve it is the ridiculous part. There are things, the carbon stuff, yeah, that's contributing to it, and we can do something about that. But even if we did something about that, by the end of this century, the average daily temperature would still rise by 2.7 degrees Celsius. So it's going to happen, it's happening anyway. People, you hear about the ice age, but nobody ever thinks about the ice age and what it was really like. The ice age, there was ice all the way down, like we talked about Texas. I mean, there was ice over Texas.
Right.
Most of North America most of the northern part of the world was covered with ice.
Are you familiar with the driftless area? You know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small area of eastern Minnesota and western Wisconsin. It's the only place on the North American continent that wasn't covered with ice. Just a small area. It's like not. It's like that's the driftless area, because I actually grew up in that area, so I know about that. So yeah, but you're right. The whole continent was covered with ice except this tiny little spot. I don't know why it escaped.
Yeah, but people don't. It's like, okay, so you say, well, the polar ice caps are melting. Okay, well, we're going the opposite direction from the ice age.
Yeah,
and when we get to that point, things will start swinging back towards the other direction. But the planet has never stayed the same. The oceans, what is now the Mojave Desert, and part of Joshua Tree, the low desert part of Joshua Tree, all that stuff was underwater at one time. That was all ocean.
They find fossils of fish there still.
Yeah. It's
unbelievable.
So, I mean, the planet has gone back and forth with this climate thing over the years. It happens slowly, um, but yeah. So that's not any like big major prediction. And the aliens. I sent you an email today. There's uh, apparently some 2023 encounter with some what are they called? Unexplained aerial phenomenon uh, off a Navy ship. There's some footage from Navy. It's not radar, but it's some other kind of detecting device. And something came up out of the water, and it wasn't shaped like aircraft, and it or a missile, and it kind of flew around, hovered, did some stuff, and it didn't have a heat signature, and it didn't have contrails or any of this other kind of stuff. And so guys are saying that that can only mean that it's extraterrestrials doing something, living under the water,
Yeah.
disguised as octopi, and or whatever they're disguised as. So it's either that or we've just got some really high tech, hydrogen fueled, uh, you know, sea to air stuff going on that nobody's going to ever tell anybody about.
Yeah, well, I hope it's ours, because if it's China or Russia's, we're screwed.
Well, the Chinese would have to steal the technology from somebody.
Yeah, that's right. They would.
And the Russians are so poor. I mean, well, we got two world leaders trying to take us back to 1952 when we had that great Cold War going on.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Because the Cold War was good for business for everybody. So
it was. That's right. Yeah, damn it, ended.
yeah, and that's why.
Isn't it amazing, Tim, that it took the 5-star general of America, Dwight Eisenhower, to stand up in January 1961 and say the military industrial complex is a threat to the country. I find that just incredible that this guy, if he thought that, oh Jesus Christ, we're screwed. I mean,
Yeah.
Because he should have been the guy, applauding that, but no, apparently it got out of control even for him.
Yeah, well, he was a very honorable guy,
He was.
and for him that transcended what should have been the rightful power of the military, and the whole thing was based on building up for the war and building up against the Cold War, and everything was kind of aimed at that stuff. That's why we use uranium for fuel for nuclear power plants instead of thorium,
Yes.
Which is more readily available and less dangerous. It's still radioactive, but far less dangerous, and takes less of it to get the equal amount of power generated from it. But everybody wanted to be working with uranium because that was the big threat around the world, was that somebody would have more uranium and more bomb capacity than us.
Yeah.
And we still have enough to blow up the planet 20 times. So
that's right. I'm glad you brought that up, because most people aren't aware of that. You're right. Thorium is more abundant than uranium is, but for whatever reason, and it's still not really used. Apparently we just kind of got onto the uranium train and basically never got off.
Well, yeah, because to use the thorium, you'd have to have different kind of equipment to regulate it, to control it, to turn it into the energy. And nobody ever put any time or money into doing that. And so right now, even now, it's like it would be extremely costly to develop, put all the time and money into that, even though to me it sounds like it would be very much worth it. But nobody wants to do all that, since, well, we got all this uranium that we can use up for a while. And then when we're done with it at the power plant, it only takes it 100,000 years before it becomes safe.
Yeah. I heard just recently, a couple days ago, that apparently Microsoft is very quietly putting the kibosh on some of their data centers they are planning on building. And the reason they're not talking about it, but the reason appears to be that they're really concerned about the availability of electricity.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, for those server farms, and you know about these, the power that it takes to run that stuff.
Ridiculous.
But I mean, even if they had the entire roof covered with solar panels, and they had a wind farm, outside in the parking lot, because you
Killing
only,
birds.
yeah, uh, it would not provide enough electricity to run one of those giant
Yeah.
places. It's a huge draw on it, and and I've never understood why this equipment requires so much electricity to operate. To me, it's like, oh well, it takes a lot of electricity. That's the problem, and it's like, well, if that's the problem, then figure out how to make it so it doesn't take up so much or doesn't need so much
Yeah.
electricity. It's like, and you talked about this before. IBM, used to have this one, this whole
Whoops.
of computerization that was like what, a 1 megabyte thing, and now it's like we've got gigabytes and terabytes of stuff, in something the size of a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
So why, okay, well, do the electrical part of that, and work that down some way. But
I'm going full circle here, coming back to what we started. So I'm in the store today, and first of all, I had our regular caller Think called in on Monday, and he is a computer professional, and I don't know how we started talking about this. We were just talking about how cheap electronic parts have gotten. And it goes back to the whole thing with China about the fact, you're right, they have little Malaysian children chained to desks, basically working for 50 cents a day. And they produce, so for example, I just bought a card for my computer here in the studio that lets me put in 4 more USB 3.0 ports in my computer. It was $16.
yeah,
So I'm in Target today, and I've been looking several places about this, but I was just kind of, and they have a sale. I bought a pair of Bluetooth earbuds, a pair of them for $19. Now they run off Bluetooth. In other words, there's radios inside of them.
yeah.
And it's like, it's $19. I mean, Jesus Christ, it was on sale, and that's the reason I bought them. But it's like, this is really getting crazy. And he was talking about the same thing about how cheap it is in these vast, like, for example, I don't understand how Google keeps up with the storage demands for YouTube. I mean, the last I heard, I think I'm going to get this right. There's 300 minutes of video uploaded to YouTube every minute. In other words, every minute there's 300 minutes of YouTube video uploaded. So they have to have a guy. I don't know where these server farms are, but they got a bunch of guys. They got a crew of guys who are basically running around all day long installing more hard drives. They'd have to, because that's now. I don't know if you heard this. They've just decided. Google finally decided after years and years of doing this, they're going to start deleting old stuff. They've never done it before. All the stuff on Google going back to 2006, all of it's still there. All the docs and Google Docs, it's all still, that stuff's still there. So they're finally going to start deleting stuff. But Jesus Christ, I mean, how? I don't understand how and so you're talking about the electricity thing. Well, of course they need a lot of power because they got 1 bazillion terabyte drives hooked up to this damn stupid website.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And I know, I do woodworking, and I'll sometimes look something up on YouTube, and I get this stuff that is so old, and by YouTube standards, And I'm looking at it, and I watch it, as my granddaughter says, I watch it ironically because it's uh,
You got a smart granddaughter.
yeah, because it's just funny to see some of these things, the early days of YouTube. Also, yeah, I gotta say, I hope they don't cut everything back, because I played Parliament Funkadelic's greatest hits yesterday. It really made the afternoon a whole lot better.
Oh yeah, you played off. You streamed it offline somewhere.
No, I just had it on YouTube. I just looked it
Oh
up.
yeah, well that's what I mean, right? Yeah,
Yeah, Funkadelics,
yeah,
and including like the 17-minute version of "Who Got the Funk" and "Gonna Tear the Roof Off," and I just there's nothing like the Parliament Funkadelic when you just need to be picked up a little bit.
I agree with you totally. That was, and of course you remember in 1978, 79 when you put on your white suit and polyester suit, you went dancing. You remember that, right?
Yeah, I didn't do that. I actually worked with a guy who went to the disco and did it. He could do all the disco moves and all that kind of stuff. And I went with him once, and at that time I had my biker look, and my bell bottoms and denim. I don't know if I was still wearing bell bottoms, with denim jacket and long hair, and smoking unfiltered Camels, and just basically the surly expression of a guy who didn't want to listen to disco music. But he'd go, "Oh, you should go check this place out," and I did, and it was pathetic. It was one of those things that you knew wasn't real.
Yes, but you make a good distinction between disco and funk, though. That's
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Funk was and that disco came out of funk, and hip hop came out of funk, rap came out of funk.
right.
All those things were born in the funk, and so that yeah, but funk was real. I mean, it touches you deep inside.
Yeah, let's hope we have enough electricity to keep running that stuff.
Yeah.
Hey Tim, I'm going to let you go. This has been very pleasant.
Oh yeah, I always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't get it through Baba Wagner's entire prediction list, but I will give you the last one. She says humanity is going to end in 5079.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll mark that on my calendar.
Yeah, right.
My new Mayan calendar.
Yeah,
and I'll be watching out for that.
yeah. Always a pleasure, man. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Oh, sure. It was fun.
Yeah, you take care. All right.
I'll see you.
We'll see you. Hi, all. I want to talk to you about Conk News. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but if you're a news junkie, you should try this out. Conk News is a news aggregator. Now, there are plenty of news aggregators on the web, but Conk News is different than all the rest, and here's how. Most other news aggregators will lump the top stories from each news source under that news source. The top 10 stories, like, for example, from Fox News, Breitbart, the New York Post, etc. What Conk News does is it sends its servers out onto the web to over 75 different news sources every 3 hours. And yes, this is an automated process, but in this case, that's actually a good thing. And collects the latest stories from said 75 sources and then lays them out on its own front page in the order they were posted, regardless of the source. So you see the latest stories at the top of the front page, regardless of where they're from. And this is all free to you. You don't need to log in. You don't need to subscribe, register, nothing. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to conk.com to check it out. That's conk.com, 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 Conk News. Our thanks to Tim Conaway. Always a pleasure to talk to him. Man, like that guy has done a lot of stuff. It's amazing too. When you get to be my age, which is really freaking old, you realize there's people all over the place that are basically kind of leading relatively quiet lives who have had incredible experiences, and Tim's one of those guys. It's like yeah, he has stories, man. He's just talking about like going to the disco in his biker outfit. Yeah, I'm sure that happened. I'm sure it's like, but he worked at Hustler magazine for years. He knew Larry Flint. Now, those of you, the youngins who don't know who Larry Flint is, you should look him up on the Wikipedia. Flint was, besides the fact he started Hustler, which was um, a pornographic magazine, basically. And of course, in the 1970s, Playboy and Penthouse were considered uh, pornographic magazines too, but they were kind of considered classy. And no offense to Tim, Hustler wasn't, but it had a huge readership. I mean, they were selling millions of magazines a month, and that's credit to Tim because that was I mean the high point of that magazine was during his tenure. So yeah, it's just anyway. Yeah, Tim is one of those guys. He's done a lot. So you can call me up still, 325-225-5546, or send me a text, 408-458-5088. Got a few things here I want to go through before we end tonight and for the week too. So this happened last night. The Florida Hammerheads, they're the single A affiliate baseball team to the Miami Marlins. They set a record last night for the number of walks during a single game, 22. Now 22 walks, and you have to understand that the minimum number of batters in a 9-inning game is 27, and the previous record in the major league record for walks in a game was 1971, the Washington Senators. They had 19, so they busted that. So I just want to go through this. This is terrible. I'm reading Zach Dean, a really interesting guy. He does the nightcap thing on Outkick, and he basically says that the Hammerhead pitchers forgot how to throw a baseball, and they did because here's the breakdown: 7 runs scored on walks, 2 runs scored on hit by pitch, 1 run scored on a wild pitch. 10 out of 19 runs scored because the 10 of 19 because the Marlin pitchers missed, or the Hammerhead pitchers. It's like what? Now, I mean, it's pretty bad. 22 walks in a 9-inning game. And I actually didn't catch the score of how much they lost by. I didn't catch that. But, well, obviously the other team scored 19 runs. So I don't know how many the Hammerheads scored, but that's kind of funny, don't you think? I'm laughing. I'm laughing. Just a little thing here about the fact there's a radio station, a classic rock radio station, Duluth, Minnesota, up north from here. That's what we call it, up north. And they have changed their branding. That station is now called Sasquatch 92.1. It really is. And they changed it. They're Sasquatch 92.1. Now, around Duluth, or what's called the Arrowhead region of Minnesota, that's the part that sticks out to the right over Wisconsin or over the Lake Superior. Yeah, that is relatively speaking, for the Midwest, a hotspot of Bigfoot activity. I mean, it's not like Washington, about Western Washington, or even like the Ohio River Valley. And I've never asked that. Tim was talking about that's where he grew up, and I knew that, but I've never actually asked him if he's ever seen a Sasquatch. I would assume he would bring that up, but I never asked him. But anyway, you got the Ohio Valley and parts of Pennsylvania, and it's not that dense as far as Bigfoot sightings, but they're up there. And that's a very, very wooded area of the country and of the state of Minnesota. Now, we're known as the land of 10,000 lakes here, but in reality, when you're talking about lakes, ponds, which are at least 10 acres in surface area, we have 15,000 lakes. Matter of fact, there's more shoreline within the state of Minnesota than any other state of the union. That includes California, believe it or not. That includes the California coast, We have that much water, and it's true. We do. There's water freaking everywhere. Minneapolis is the city of lakes, and that's Minneapolis actually translates to, well, it's a hybrid of an Indian and a Greek term of city of water. You know, and there's lakes inside the city. All as a matter of fact, there's the in South Minneapolis. You got the chain of lakes, but yeah, you got Sasquatch up north. I don't think anyone's ever seen one here. I don't think that. Um, there's a company called Pivotal that has come out with a personal. They don't call it a flying car, even though that's kind of sort of what it is. They call it a personal aircraft vehicle or something like that, called the Helix, and it's on sale now. You can buy it for $190,000, and the price will probably drop. But this it's an amazing little device. It only holds one person. It's basically it's safe as hell because it's basically crash proof. Because what they've done is it does vertical takeoff and landing, so you don't need a runway or you don't need wheels or any of that sort of stuff. It just sits down and then lifts up. But they figured out kind of like remember the I'm trying to think today. I can't remember. This isn't NASA. It was the old Dick Rutan space vehicle where they tilted the thing to make certain it wouldn't burn up on reentry. This thing actually this vehicle actually tilts to take off and land. It's actually quite ingenious. It's pretty amazing. The amazing that I mentioned this in the opening of the show. Uh, I can't ride in it because I weigh too much. What? And this is really incredible. Of the carbon fiber body, this whole vehicle weighs only 328 pounds. The whole thing, and it's about the size of a small car. It's really, really. I mean, this is really incredible, and it even has a full parachute. Man, if everything goes to hell, will still land. You will not crash. So the whole vehicle has its parachute system. Now I don't know if you know this. Now most single engine aircraft like Cessnas and stuff like that, most of them also have parachute systems, so that if the plane's actually crashing or stalls out, the parachute will open, and the plane ends up. You might get a little from bumps and bruises, and your plane's going to get some dents, but at least you won't die. Same thing here. It's a pretty amazing device. It actually is. They've done a pretty good job here. And there's several companies that are coming out with this now. There's one, and I can't remember what it's called, where it actually does look like a car. It has wheels, and you can drive it as a vehicle on the road, but the body is mesh, and the fans for the flying part of it are inside what would be the trunk and the hood, the engine compartment, and the thing can actually just lift off and fly. There's that too. That's happening too. We're finally going to have these flying cars. Finally, now that'll be interesting. I mean, Christ, they can't even keep track of the drones for Amazon delivery, let alone flying cars. The other thing about this vehicle that this Pivotal Helix is that it qualifies under the ultralight aircraft category by the FAA, which you don't even need a license to drive it. You don't. Only thing is you can't drive it at night. That's the thing. And so they went through great pains to make certain that they fit in the parameters, which are fairly strict for those flying those airplanes. Ultralight. They're ultralights, the ultralight category. So you do not need a license, a flying license, or aviation license to fly those things. You don't, but you can't fly at night either. So yeah, that's the thing. So that's interesting. Uh, and we talked about Barbara Vanya. Okay, hold on, because there's one more thing I want to run by you. Okay, there's this term. This is what it is. The youngins, the young people, and you can call me up and call me an old pervert. That's fine because I am. Have a term called it's a bop, and apparently that's the new version of the word slut. Apparently, that's what we use. A slut is a very promiscuous person, and unfortunately, and still true. Unfortunately, you'd think that this would eventually end, but it's mostly ascribed to women, as slut was 50 years ago. And you'd think we get over this because I mean, women have needs too, right, guys? They do, right? Right? Some woman call me up and tell me about it. I don't know, you know. So, any rate, yeah, this has become the new term for people who are very promiscuous. Now, we live in a day and age now where you don't really have to, assuming you take certain precautions, you don't have to worry about really getting pregnant anymore. But the problem is most people don't take those precautions. That's the reason. And usually it's because of the spontaneousness of sex. You know, it's like, oh my God, we're locked in a room. What should we do now? Well, geez, I don't know. It's like, who was a friend of mine? I was just talking about it the other day. Oh, the astronauts, the two astronauts that were stuck on the space station. She said, "Well, what are those people doing for 9 months?" It's like, don't they get bored? And I don't know if you know this. This goes back way, way to like the 1980s. But during Skylab, which was the very first space station ever sent up, it only held 8 people, and it was not that big. But at any rate, and it was they sent it up. It was in the bay of a space shuttle, and Skylab, they sent up a married astronaut team. This is the United States did, and NASA did this. And everyone says, are they going to have sex up there? And NASA says, no, absolutely not. That is completely verboten. There's no sex in space between astronauts. Well, come on, they're married. Who are you fooling? And not only that, don't you want the data? It's like, don't you want to hook up a bunch of electrodes and see what happens to their bodies when they're having sex in space? Don't you want to see that? I'm sure. No, no, no. No, can't be done. Supposedly the Russians sent up female cosmonauts literally, literally to service the male astronauts on the Soyuz space station. Supposedly, that was, they never confirmed that either, but that was widely rumored that's the reason those girls went up there. It's like they weren't up there to collect data. Let's put it that way, you know. So I don't know, but do you think in this day and age we'd be over this? People and I mean, I hate to be blunt about this, but people get horny. They do, So it's not something that should be shameful. Shameful. It is. It shouldn't. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, so now, like I said, our show for tomorrow night's been canceled because our guest had to reschedule. So he's going to be on. That's Jonathan Lockwood, military historian and author, and he writes about space too. And so he's going to come on next Thursday, the 17th. So we're off for tomorrow night. Monday night, Don Zorro, our old friend, intelligence operative and lover of women, is joining us. Tuesday night, Dr. Murray Sabrin is going to try to explain the technicalities of tariffs to us. I literally called him up and said, "Look, can you come on and talk about this?" Because this gets back to what I was talking about before, and and what Tim was talking about too. Not only does nobody in America know anything about economics, freaking Congress doesn't know anything about economics. It's nuts. These people, they're making decisions for us. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, some of these people are just stone cold idiots. I mean, that's all there's to it. And I'm not just saying, not necessarily talking about Democrats either. Both parties, they're stupid. They're just stupid. You're wondering why America runs so badly? Well, there you go. And you can't quite say the same thing about the Senate. You can make an argument that maybe the Senate's more conniving and dishonest and all that sort of stuff, but they aren't quite as stupid. First of all, there's less of them. There's just that. Secondly, it takes more work and more money to get into the Senate. I mean, it's definitely, if we got the House of Commons and the House of Lords, they're definitely our House of Lords for sure, you know. So I'm not going to say they don't do stupid things, but they don't do as many stupid things and as often and as stupid. They don't. So anyway, so that's Tuesday. Murray Sabin's coming on. Wednesday, we're going to have a guest. Can't talk about it yet. Thursday, Jonathan Lockwood will be here. We got a full show slate of shows, and I'm really excited. Now, I could do a solo show tomorrow, but the fact is, I got work to do for this. This has become a full time job for me. So I mean, booking guests is very very time consuming, very time intensive. It is, and there's other stuff too, and I don't want to talk to you about that. So we got to do what we got to do. So anyway, you didn't call tonight. Screw you again. We got a really good phone system here. Our friend Think, he calls in regularly. It's too bad when we're on on Blog Talk Radio, we had about, oh no, half a dozen regular callers roughly, and Blog Talk Radio folded, and most of them did not follow us over here. So, and that's kind of too bad. And Think was even talking on Monday. He was talking about Blog Talk Radio too. I mean, it was. I If I had had the money, I would have purchased it. I don't know why they. I don't know if they tried to sell it and couldn't or what, but they just folded up after 15 years, and it was the only place online you could broadcast like we're doing now, audio only. It was the only place where you could broadcast like community radio. So, and we were part of that for quite a while, including back on Kong News too, when we were doing that. Anyway, so that's our schedule next week. I want to thank you folks for watching. You make this show possible. I really appreciate it a lot. I do. Good night, Esperanza. Good night, Uncle Donnie. And good night to you wherever you are. We'll see you on Monday, everybody. Take care. Have a nice weekend.